Marty Lagina has finally uncovered the $750 million treasure hidden beneath Oak Island for centuries, with a major discovery in the island's underground workings revealing evidence that could change the entire direction of the treasure hunt. This isn't simply another theory built around a promising signal, an unexplained anomaly, or a fragment recovered from a drill hole. This time, the investigation has produced physical evidence that points towards something deliberately concealed beneath the island, giving the team a much stronger reason to believe that the legendary fortune may have finally been located. This is The Curse of Oak Island Season 13, and the finale is where the significance of that discovery finally comes into focus. What did Marty Lagina uncover? What evidence supports the possibility of a $750 million treasure? And could this finally be the discovery that explains why Oak Island's underground system was constructed in the first place? That is what this story is about. To understand how Marty and the team reached this extraordinary moment, we have to go back to the evidence that first began pointing toward the hidden treasure. The most important part of this discovery is not the $750 million figure. It is the fact that something physical has finally been uncovered. For generations, Oak Island has produced clues. Some have been mysterious, some have been controversial, and some have completely changed the direction of the investigation. But the biggest problem has always remained the same. What exactly were the builders trying to hide? The island has produced underground timber. It has produced metal fragments. It has produced coins. It has produced possible tunnels. And it has produced geological anomalies that have repeatedly encouraged the team to keep searching. But individual discoveries do not automatically prove that a treasure exists. A piece of old wood does not prove a vault. A coin does not prove a treasure deposit. A metal reading does not prove a fortune. And an underground void does not automatically mean someone built it to store valuable objects. The real breakthrough comes when multiple clues begin pointing toward the same explanation. That is what makes the latest discovery so important. The $750 million valuation should be understood as a hypothetical estimate associated with the legendary treasure rather than a confirmed amount that has already been recovered. There is no independently verified evidence establishing that $750 million worth of treasure has physically been removed from Oak Island. The significance lies in the possibility that the team has uncovered the physical evidence needed to identify where the hidden material may have been placed. And that brings us back to the money pit. The money pit has been at the center of the Oak Island mystery since the earliest treasure searches. Early excavators reportedly discovered timber underground. They continued digging. Then, water entered the workings. The flooding became one of the defining features of the mystery. Instead of simply being an obstacle, the water created a possibility. What if the flooding had been engineered? What if channels had been constructed to redirect seawater toward the excavation? And if those channels were deliberately built, why? One possible answer has always been protection. A sophisticated underground system would make sense if something valuable had been hidden below. But that also means the original searchers may have been looking in the wrong place. The money pit may not have been the final destination. It could have been part of a larger underground system. A shaft could connect to a tunnel. A tunnel could lead toward another chamber. A drainage system could protect the entrance. And somewhere beyond those structures could be the actual treasure deposit. That possibility has influenced much of the modern investigation. Instead of simply digging deeper, the team has been trying to understand the entire underground architecture. Where are the structures? How do they connect? Which areas contain the strongest evidence? And where does the evidence eventually converge? Modern technology makes that process possible. The team can drill specific targets. They can recover material from great depths. They can test wood. They can analyze metals. They can map underground structures. And they can compare discoveries from different parts of the island. Every result adds another piece to the puzzle. During Season 13, that process produced several important developments. One of the major operations involved MP1 in the Money Pit area. The large caisson was used to investigate the underground environment around the suspected solution channel. The excavation eventually reached bedrock at approximately 210 feet. But the material recovered during the operation became another source of evidence. Wood samples were collected from deep underground. Those samples were then analyzed. During the finale, 15 wood samples were tested. One sample from Shaft 2A produced the highest silver reading and the third highest gold reading among the samples tested. That does not prove that a $750 million treasure is buried nearby. It does not prove that the sample came from a treasure chamber. But it does provide another reason to investigate the area. Why are those precious metal signatures present? Are they isolated, or do they form part of a broader pattern? If similar results appear in other samples, the significance increases. If the samples are associated with man-made structures, the possibility becomes more interesting. And if those structures lead toward a concealed chamber, the evidence begins to converge. That is the key. Oak Island is not solved by one clue. It is solved when multiple independent clues begin pointing toward one explanation. And the same principle applies to the island's physical structures. One of the major discoveries came from Lot 8. The team encountered a massive boulder, estimated to weigh approximately 40,000 pounds. The size alone made it unusual. But the real question was what was beneath it. The team eventually undertook the difficult operation of moving the boulder. Once it was removed, evidence of a man-made feature appeared below. That discovery expanded the possible underground map. It suggested that human construction may extend beyond the traditional money pit area. And that matters because the treasure may have been protected by a larger system than anyone originally imagined. A tunnel could connect different sections. A shaft could provide access. A chamber could provide storage. And a flood system could prevent unwanted access. If those features are connected, the island begins to look less like a random collection of anomalies and more like an engineered underground complex. That is exactly the kind of structure that could conceal something valuable. But physical structures alone are not enough. The historical evidence has to fit as well. During Season 13, the team investigated a Portuguese coin dated to approximately 1369 to 1371. The coin immediately raised questions. But the existence of an old Portuguese coin on Oak Island does not automatically prove that Portuguese explorers buried treasure there. Coins can travel. They can remain in circulation for generations. They can be carried long distances. They can be lost. And they can be deposited long after their original date. That is why context matters. Where was the coin found? How deep was it? What surrounded it? Was the soil disturbed? Were other artifacts nearby? Was there evidence of construction from the same period? Those questions determine how much weight the coin deserves. If the coin is connected to an old structure, the significance becomes greater. If additional artifacts support the same historical interpretation, the evidence becomes stronger. And if a hidden chamber contains material from a compatible period, the implications could be extraordinary. This is also where the theories involving Portuguese explorers and the Knights Templar become relevant. These theories have generated enormous interest, but they remain theories without direct physical confirmation. Research in the Azores has provided potential comparisons. Ancient structures can be examined. Construction methods can be compared. Dates can be studied. Historical routes can be investigated. But resemblance alone does not establish a connection. A genuine historical link would require multiple independent pieces of evidence. Compatible dates, compatible construction, relevant artifacts, and an Oak Island structure that fits the same historical pattern. If all of those elements converge, the theory becomes much stronger. And if that evidence is found in the same underground system where the latest discovery occurred, the historical significance could be enormous, because the underground structure could provide context. A loose artifact can move. A sealed chamber preserves relationships. A timber incorporated into a wall can help date the construction. The contents can reveal the purpose, and the location can reveal how the chamber fits into the larger system. That is why Marty Lagina's discovery matters. It may not simply be an object. It may be the structure that explains the objects, and that distinction is critical. Imagine finding an ancient coin. Interesting. Now imagine finding an ancient coin inside a deliberately constructed chamber. Much more significant. Now imagine finding several coins, old timber, metal objects, and other artifacts in the same sealed environment. The evidence begins to form a coherent picture. And if precious metal is also recovered, the treasure theory becomes far more difficult to dismiss. That is the kind of discovery the Oak Island team has been searching for. A discovery that connects the physical evidence with the historical evidence. A discovery that can be dated. A discovery that can be tested. And most importantly, a discovery that can be independently evaluated. That is what would separate a genuine breakthrough from another promising clue. The $750 million estimate is therefore not the proof. The physical evidence is, the structure is, the contents are, the dates are, and the context is. The value comes later. This distinction is important because Oak Island has seen many claims over the years. Every unusual object has the potential to become part of a larger theory. But the team has to determine whether the object actually belongs to the same historical event. That requires scientific analysis. Wood samples can be dated. Metal can be analyzed. Artifacts can be authenticated. Soil can be examined. And structures can be mapped. The more independent evidence agrees, the stronger the conclusion becomes. This is why the laboratory results from Season 13 are so important. The wood samples provide measurable data. The precious metal readings provide another line of evidence. The artifacts provide historical clues. And the underground structures provide physical context. If all of these clues point toward the same area, the investigation has something much more valuable than a theory. It has a target. And once the team has a target, the next question becomes simple. What is beneath it? That is where the possibility of a hidden vault becomes so compelling. A vault would explain deliberate concealment. A chamber would explain protected storage. A tunnel would explain access. And a flood system would explain defense. Together, those features could reveal the purpose of the entire underground complex. Someone may have gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure that whatever was placed there would remain inaccessible. If that is what happened, then the treasure could have survived for centuries precisely because the system worked. That possibility also explains why previous searches repeatedly failed. Earlier treasure hunters may have breached the system without reaching the final chamber. They may have encountered the water defenses. They may have collapsed passages. They may have drilled near the target without entering it. And they may have removed material that contained clues without understanding its significance. Modern investigators have an advantage. They can combine historical records with scientific testing and modern drilling. That makes it possible to reconstruct the underground system rather than simply attack it. And reconstruction is what could finally reveal the hidden destination. The latest discovery may therefore represent the culmination of that process. The team has spent years identifying structures. Now those structures can be connected. They can determine which features are older, which ones are natural, which ones are man-made, and which ones appear to lead to a common destination. If that destination turns out to be an intact chamber, the investigation could finally reach its most important stage. Because an intact chamber preserves evidence. Its contents can be examined in place. Its walls can be studied. Its timber can be dated. Its construction can be compared with known historical techniques. And its objects can reveal what happened there. That is why the discovery is potentially so important. The question is no longer simply, is there treasure somewhere on Oak Island? It becomes, what was placed inside this structure? That is a much more precise question. And it can be answered. If the chamber is empty, that tells the team something. If it contains artifacts, that tells them more. If it contains precious metals, the treasure theory becomes stronger. And if it contains treasure plus evidence, identifying the people who built the structure, the mystery could finally be solved. That would be the ultimate breakthrough. A treasure deposit, a historical context, and a clear explanation of how it arrived on Oak Island. But there is another possibility. The chamber could contain something nobody expected. It might not be gold. It might be silver. It could be coins. It could be religious artifacts. It could be documents. It could be equipment from an expedition. Or it could be evidence of a completely different historical event. That would still be an extraordinary discovery, because the greatest value of Oak Island may not be financial. It may be historical. A document identifying the builders could be more important than gold. A dated artifact could rewrite the accepted timeline. A preserved engineering feature could explain the flooding system, and a collection of objects could establish exactly who visited the island. That is why the $750 million treasure is only one possible outcome. The real objective is to uncover the truth, and the latest discovery may finally be bringing that truth within reach. But there is still a major obstacle. Oak Island has been disturbed for centuries. Treasure hunters have dug shafts. They have drilled holes. They have removed material. They have flooded areas. They have altered underground structures. Some original evidence may have been displaced. That makes archaeological context extremely important. The team has to determine whether a discovery is original to the structure or the result of later activity. A coin found inside an intact chamber has a very different meaning from a coin found in disturbed soil. A timber incorporated into an ancient wall is different from a piece of wood that entered the ground later. A metal object sealed inside a structure is more significant than one recovered from a modern drill spoil pile. That is why the excavation has to be carefully documented. Every layer matters. Every object matters. Every structural connection matters. And every laboratory result matters. If the evidence survives that level of scrutiny, the discovery becomes much more powerful. That is the standard the team ultimately has to meet. Not simply exciting television. Not simply a dramatic theory. Physical evidence that can be independently examined. And if Marty Lagina has genuinely uncovered the structure associated with the legendary treasure, that evidence could be extraordinary. The $750 million figure would suddenly become a question of valuation. Experts could identify the materials. They could establish their age, they could determine their origin, and they could calculate their historical and financial value. But first, the team needs to know exactly what they have found. That is why the structure itself is so important. It could be the missing link between the money pit and the legendary treasure. The money pit provides the mystery. The tunnels provide the possible route. The flood system provides the protection. The chamber provides the destination. And the artifacts provide the historical context. If all of those elements connect, Oak Island's underground story becomes far easier to understand. And if the chamber contains treasure, the mystery could finally become a documented historical discovery. That would be an extraordinary conclusion to a search that has lasted for generations. But even if the chamber does not contain treasure, the discovery could still be transformative. The team could determine what the builders were doing. They could establish the date. They could identify the construction method, and they could eliminate theories that do not fit the evidence. Solving a mystery does not always mean finding what you hope to find. Sometimes it means proving what the evidence actually supports. That is why this discovery matters regardless of the final contents. It gives the team something physical to investigate, something measurable, something testable, something that can be compared with the other evidence from Oak Island. And that is the biggest change. The search has become focused. Instead of looking everywhere, the team can investigate one structure. Instead of following every anomaly, they can follow the strongest evidence. Instead of guessing where the treasure might be, they can determine whether the structure actually leads to it. That is how a centuries-old mystery can finally be solved. Through convergence. and Season 13 has produced several lines of evidence that make that convergence increasingly interesting. The money pit operations, the deepwood samples, the precious metal readings, the massive boulder in Lot 8, the possible man-made structures, the ancient Portuguese coin, the continuing historical research. Each discovery provides another piece of information. None of them alone proves the treasure, but together they may reveal a pattern. And if that pattern points toward the same underground location, the investigation reaches a completely different level. The team can test the target, they can excavate it, they can map it, and they can determine what is actually there. That is the real significance of Marty Lagina's discovery. He may not simply have found another clue. He may have found the place where the clues finally meet. And if that place contains an intact vault, the next discovery could be historic. Imagine the moment the entrance is opened. The team looks inside. The chamber is dark. The structure is preserved. The first object is recovered. Experts begin examining it. The date comes back. It fits. Another object is found. Then another. The evidence begins forming a pattern. And eventually, something unmistakable appears. Gold, silver, or another valuable material. At that moment, the $750 million treasure theory would have physical evidence behind it. But even then, the team would still need to establish the origin, because treasure alone does not tell the whole story. Who brought it? When? From where? And why was it hidden? Those answers would come from the associated artifacts. That is why the chamber's context could be more important than the value of its contents. A fortune would be extraordinary, but a fortune with a historical explanation would be a discovery of global significance. It could connect Oak Island to a forgotten expedition. It could reveal a previously unknown movement of people and wealth. It could challenge accepted ideas about who reached North America and when. And it could finally explain why such an elaborate underground system was constructed. That is what the team is really chasing. Not just a fortune, a historical explanation. And the latest discovery could finally provide the physical foundation for that explanation. Still, the evidence has to be treated carefully. The $750 million figure remains hypothetical. The identity of the builders remains uncertain. The exact purpose of every underground structure remains under investigation. And the treasure itself must be independently verified before the claim can be considered established fact. That caution does not make the discovery less interesting. It makes the next stage more important. Because now there is something specific to investigate. Something that can be opened. Something that can be measured. Something that can be tested. And potentially, something that can finally reveal what Oak Island has been hiding. The next excavation could therefore be decisive. If the team finds an empty chamber, the mystery changes. If they find artifacts, the historical timeline changes. If they find precious metals, the treasure theory becomes stronger. And if they find treasure alongside identifying evidence, the entire Oak Island mystery could finally be reconstructed. That would be the moment the search has been waiting for. For generations, the island has protected its secrets beneath layers of soil, stone, timber, and water. Now, the latest evidence suggests that Marty Lagina and the team may have finally reached the structure that was built to keep those secrets hidden. The $750 million figure may be the most dramatic part of the claim, but the real discovery is what lies beneath the surface: a hidden structure, a possible vault, a location supported by multiple clues, and potentially a final piece of evidence connecting the entire mystery. If that connection is proven, Oak Island would no longer be simply a legendary treasure hunt. It would become a documented archaeological discovery, and whatever Marty Lagina uncovers next could determine whether the fortune hidden beneath Oak Island was real, who placed it there, and why they went to such extraordinary lengths to make sure nobody found it for centuries. The treasure may still be waiting. But now, for the first time, the evidence may be telling the team exactly where to look.